Most organizations are approaching AI as an automation project. They take the processes they have, some of them a decade old, and make them faster. But a faster version of the wrong process is still the wrong process. My guest today has spent his career at the intersection of technology and human capability, and he has a very different idea about where the real opportunity lies. The Learning Leaders Podcast features conversations with chief learning officers and heads of learning from global companies. We'll be hearing about the learning journeys of these leaders, the changes they're bringing in their organizations, and how they're preparing their workforce for the future of learning. Following is a conversation with Marco Ghezzi. Marco is strategic advisor to Convergent and a portfolio of advanced AI startups, following a decade as CLO and VP Global L&D at Nokia. With a background spanning electronic engineering, R&D, product management and sales, he brings a rare 360-degree enterprise perspective to learning and workforce transformation. At Nokia, he led learning for 80,000 employees and 1,600 customers across more than 140 countries. He now works at the frontier of AI and human capability, helping shape the next generation of AI-powered learning ecosystems. This conversation explores what it means to lead learning at genuine enterprise scale and why Marco believes that talent development is not a support function for AI strategy, but the strategy itself. We get into leadership, digital twins, AI-driven workflow redesign, mental health and well-being, and why the ground is moving faster under your feet than most organizations have yet understood. Marco, it's great to have you on the show. Welcome to the Learning Leaders Podcast.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here.
Marco, you've been Chief Learning Officer, VP Global L&D at one of the world's largest global telecoms with something like 70 to 80,000 employees. And you're there about 10 years. You've now left and you're now on the bleeding edge of AI consulting. Let's just stick with the Nokia experience for the moment. What were the major challenges of leading a learning function in a tech company of that scale? And what were your priorities in addressing those challenges? And maybe talk a bit about how you set up and managed Nokia.edu, which was a huge operation.
Sure, John. First of all, let me underline the context. The context was that as Chief Learning Officer, myself and my organization, my team, we were responsible of 80,000 employee learning and about 1,600 customers worldwide.
Wow.
Because I was also in charge of the product attached training. Then every time that Nokia sell a product, there is a training to explain to the customer how to use that product. I would say that the major challenging and my solution to address those challenges were 5. The first was business impact. Second, the learner experience. Third, in such huge environment, the scalability and the operational efficiency. Fourth, organization, people, culture. And 5, one of the most important, innovation. How I tackle this? Let's start with the business impact. If you are in learning, if you are leading learning in an enterprise, you must have a business impact. Otherwise, it's better that you change job. To do this, I was, let's say, in the right shoes, let's say, because I have a 20 years business background. Then when I connected to the business, Nokia has 4 huge business group. After 5 minutes that I was speaking with them, they told me, Marco, but you're speaking our language. And I said, yes, I led R&D, I led sales and pre-sales. I live in business group for 20 years. And this helped a lot to understand their real needs. And also there was a good confidence on their side that I could understand this. Then from this standpoint, we established a network of connection toward these 80,000 people. We had a distributed approach, having 1 or 2, let's say, delegate directly internal to this organization in these big teams. Then we have about 200 people distributed inside the organization that they could give us the real needs of those organizations, that because they were living there. And this worked very well. Then first, business impact connection with the business. All the transformation that we did for mobile net of 25,000 people transformation in competence development to agile. And we were always monitoring the business KPI. Obviously, also the learning KPI, but the business KPI. Or the organization improving business, or you are doing something wrong in to enable them in learning. Second was the learner experience. Here, the AI in the last years helped a lot, because learner experience means engagement, gamification, means that they are not sleeping going through our training and learning. And then on this, I was lucky because AI helped a lot. I will explain later about this. Scalability and operational efficiency. Here, to manage such large organization, you need to make choices that are going in the direction of efficiency to, let's say, keep balance the cost, because I was under also a strong cost pressure. And one of the key things that we did was to commonalize the technical content between the employee and the external customer, the thousands of external customers that I told you before. This obviously reduced a lot the cost, because we needed to create and deliver same content. Now, this was not the full portfolio, but this was very, very important. Fourth, organization, performance, and culture. I'm an agile leader. I always delegate a lot to selected people, and I always empower my leader to delegate on my behalf to their teams. Because now that in this big organization, there are leaders of leaders. And I can tell you that the key is really to create trust, to openly assign objectives, not action. Because if you assign objectives, the person, the leaders, and all the, let's say, employees are empowered to decide how to achieve the objective. And then they own the objective. And this free up their energy, and the performance is always up. Also, as a culture, obviously on the ethical side, we were zero tolerance and so on. But also as a culture, we always recognize successes. We always empower the people in order to be always more autonomous. And this worked a lot. Last but not least, innovation. Thanks to my R&D background, I always keep the edge of the technology inside learning. And especially through AI, this is fundamental, because through augmented virtual reality, metaverse, and so on, you can be more immersive. But through AI, you can personalize your training and your learning. And this engage a lot the learner. Now, then, let's say, innovation is one of the bases of the factor on which I worked a lot, to stay always on the edge of the innovation. In the end, we moved from create and deliver learning to create ecosystem that enable the workforce in the flow of work to improve their skills. And this skill-based approach is fundamental in the today AI fast speed environment.
Before we get on to talking about AI, which we will, can we first dwell a bit on your personal journey in learning? You studied electronic engineering initially, which would seem to set you up for a career on the production side. But you went on to have a variety of senior roles across the business in R&D, product management, sales, and so on. So what led you after that to focus on learning? What drew you to learning?
Good question, John. And you know how all the important things in the life happen by chance.
Yeah.
Always like that. I was leading in that moment a huge team in pre-sales. After that, I led for 15 years R&D. And a friend of mine told me, there is a job post on learning for a leadership position on learning. Maybe you can think about that. And to be honest, at the beginning, I thought, but this is just learning. I just created things in R&D. I led the sales and pre-sales. And you know what? I fallen in love with learning. I discovered a new world where I could see the full company. When I was R&D or pre-sale, I was, in a certain segment of the company. While with learning, you can see all the different business groups that are by nature very different each other. You can see all the central function, finance, and all the things, how they are moving and coordinating each other inside the company. this given me really a strong emotion and big engagement. And then, say, thanks to my knowledge about the technical part, being Nokia 60-70% an R&D company, I was, between bracket, in my field. I was very comfortable. And then, say, I started to look to the intersection with the technology, because I'm a technologist. And this helped a lot. Then in the end, I discovered that learning given me this 360-degree view of the full company at the intersection between people, business transformation, that is fundamental, and innovation itself.
See, I'm curious about that because some L&D leaders I talk to say they dearly love to get a 360-degree view of the business, but can't always get it. Some feel that learning is in a bit of a ghetto within their organizations, and the sort of business measures and business outputs you talk about can actually be rather hard to get hold of. They've got their happy sheets, but when they go to the organization and say, we'd like some numbers about how sales are performing or whether compliance is actually making any difference and so on, they get pushed back or sidelined or bypassed or just ignored. How easy or difficult have you found it in your roles to solve that problem of joining the dots?
I think to link the learning transformation, learning program, learning experience to business KPI is something that depends on the trust that you create between the learning environment, the L&D, and the business itself. Because they start to export, the business start to export the KPI once they believe that the learning team is really an enabler for them to develop the right critical current skill and future current skill. In that moment, once they believe on you, they agree to monitor directly the impact on their KPI, their business KPI, what they have in their performance review, let's say, and what their leader assigned them. Then I think in one word is the trust and the partnership that you can create with the business.
So interesting. With your engineering background, one might assume, to put it crudely, that you look at organizational learning as an engineering problem, albeit one of a specialized type. What you're talking about there is really about trust and governance, and that comes to your leadership model. How you feel about leadership. You've mentioned the centrality of trust in forming relationships, but widening that out a bit, would you like to speak more about your personal approach to leadership?
Yes. With my friends and my colleague, I always joke, now I'm Marco 4.0. In the time of AI, in the era of AI, I think it's best. Why I'm saying this? Because once I started to lead the team and organization many years ago, I was more on a command and control. That is what the human nature drives you to try to achieve the fix. But this is not scaling, is not efficient. And then, as a Marco 4.0, with different steps, because I think, the human factor are not easy to be tuned, also in our real life, not only the working life. I became an agile leader where I selected properly people to delegate, and I strongly delegate on them. And I became a sort of a coach, try to help them once they need to remove obstacles from them, assigning clear objectives, very clear objectives. Once these objectives are clear, they were responsible to define a way to achieve those objectives. And this was a sort of a cascade of approach that free up the energy of the team. And I can tell you, John, the final performance is 3-4 per. No, it's really, and always also, I learn how to manage ambiguity. Again, when I was Marco 1.0, I wanted all the parameters to take the decision. But in the real life, in working life, it's never like this. Then I learn how to manage ambiguity, complexity, and with a strong active listening, I started to learn how to make assumptions and then to take strategic decisions based on the data that we had in that moment. And after that, being agile leader, we were ready. My full organization was ready to tune, to iterate, and to adjust. That's in my view, the best leadership style to achieve performance at scale.
We move to AI. It's a major issue for most companies, and particularly so for companies in the tech and IT sectors. You have a view that the next competitive advantage is not AI alone. It is AI amplifying human intelligence at scale. Now, I'm all in favour of the human myself. I'm sure most L&D people are. But we hear other voices saying that really the humans need to kind of get out of the way a bit. So do you want to talk a bit about how you feel organisations are currently approaching AI and how they need to approach it? How do we synchronize human skills and the skills of AI to work effectively and prevent it all going horribly wrong?
Yeah, great question. I think AI is having a strong impact in all the organization. AI need a profound transformation of the way of work. Say, the people and the organization and the company need to understand that the AI is not only the low-hanging fruit that it is, let me automate something. Because you are automating a process that is 10 years old. You're automating the past. Yes, maybe it is a bit faster, but this is not the revolution of AI. The revolution of AI is to redefine the processes, to redefine how the work is done. And that's, I think, what affect also the human factor and the soft skill of the people, and to change the day by day. You know that change the day by day is hard, because a person that worked on something for 10 years there is a change management process that you need to lead to combine AI in new redesign processes properly. And you need to ensure that the people, the employee, the leaders understand how to work in this new environment. Then it's a process that takes time. And in my experience, we were successful once we approached this as per use cases. Okay, you define a real use cases, that is software development. For instance, in Nokia, software development was a fundamental thing. That obviously with AI is revolutionized. And then you go through a new model, and at the same time, you tune with iteration the way of work. Obviously, in all of this, learning L&D is fundamental, because L&D in this specific transformation become an enabler, because all these things means to have new skills, but to have in a very fast manner your skills. Then learning, thanks also to AI, that is for sure the subject to be developed in the people as a skill, but at the same time is also a tool, especially for R&D, to embed the learning in the flow of work. That is, I think, the fundamental move to really create an environment where the people naturally start to understand how to act with AI, remove their fear, because they understand that they are augmented by AI. They are not replaced, at least, let's say, in the majority of the cases. There are also cases where very routinary jobs are really replaced. But there is this needs of new fast skill. And then again, the transformation of L&D, that is from creating courses and delivering courses to creating an environment close to the day by day of the business that enable to upskill and reskill very fast.
So many ways we could go in unpacking what you just said. It's a very interesting answer. One thing I'd like to zero in on is how AI impacts an existing workflow. A lot of people I talk to are going through this at the moment, myself included. They look at their own workflow and they try to bring AI to bear on it. What I'm hearing a lot is that you get this kind of double loop learning. Start by trying to automate bits of it, save yourself time and cost usually. But in looking at your workflow, what you quickly see is that it's developed contingently and iteratively over time. And you might have put certain things in place because you had a problem with a certain platform, you needed a workaround. Really, it's a mess. So the answer you come to is this: you need to junk it. You need to junk that workflow, get back to first principles and build effectively a new one more suited to the way that AI works. And I suspect this is happening all over the place. Marco, reflecting on your own experience, how has AI shaped the way you work or reshaped the way that you work, more to the point? and also perhaps your attitude towards your own career and practice?
Great question. For sure, AI also imply a profound transformation in the L&D activity. Say, the content creation is now, my team, 60-70% completely automated. You can achieve through AI an hyper-personalization that was never possible before. And you achieve a couple of dreams of the CLO. The first is the learning in the flow of work. Now, for instance, a software developer has tools like Cursor, Ghezzi, or other that allow the developer to learn while he's doing things, or he or she is doing things. And this is learning in the flow of work. That is the most experiential things and the most impactful things in learning, and that increase the learning speed. I think this is fundamental. The second aspect is the strong personalization. Now, if you start to learn from a platform that understands you, you are much more engaged. Much more engaged. It's not the flat things that all they need to learn, but what is proposed to you is exactly what you need in that moment. On top of this, being now also a strategic advisor of a great startup, AI startup that is Convergent, this hyper-realistic simulation, these are exactly in the direction where our brain evolve, optimizing learning from experience. Now, you have this in a very easy manner, this hyper-realistic simulation that you can simulate conversation that maybe you could have with a customer, or depending on the different scenario, because any scenario can be created. And you receive a feedback, and you can do better, and the system know where are your weakness. And then in the next simulation, the system will help you to develop your weakness, and you will be better. And then learning by doing, learning by experiences, you are maximizing the impact. The learning speed is about 10 times in that case, because it's like in the real life. If I want to start to go on a bicycle, if I start to do the things, I will learn much faster than not to study theory and so on. Based on this, there is also other technologies that are really fascinating. Always speaking about conversion, like, for instance, digital twins. The ability to replicate, for instance, a knowledge of something. For years in telco, we had a big issue that there are equipment in the network that are 30 years old, and all the engineers that created this now are in pension. If you can replicate the knowledge of this, AI can help you to answer of all the customer support that you want without trying to phone to a 70-year-old person that now is doing other things and enjoying the life. Then these are really revolutionary things. Together, obviously, the immersive learning through the augmented virtual reality and so on. I think these are really something that changed probably 70% in learning and development environment.
The digital twin phenomenon is very interesting, but does it raise ethical concerns, do you think?
No, yeah, okay. That's a very important. AI always need to follow ethical policy. Obviously, the digital twin needed to be agreed, understanding what is the knowledge or the behavior, because you can also make a copy, let's say, of a certain behavior. This need to be agreed properly, need to be in line with the policy of a company and also of the final user. But once you do this, I think is really something that solve issues that probably are, as I told you, issue from decades.
In Nokia, you worked for one of the world's most ethical companies, 9 times winner of an award for being an ethical company. Mental health and wellness are a part of that, of course. I know that's an area that you really care about. What are the challenges that workforces you deal with face under this heading, and what's been the response under your leadership?
Yes, you tackle a very important point, John, especially in the big organization, and especially in organization that, for instance, like learning, that are connected to the product, connected to the R&D, so strongly connected to the rest of the company. The people, all the employee, has a big pressure, a daily big pressure, and not only is a fast changing, like in this moment with AI in any job, but especially there also is a fast changing environment. You are stressed to develop new skills and so on. Then I applied under my leadership some principle. Part of this I already mentioned. First, to be really open and transparent. It's very important to create trust, to engage the people, like I told you, with empowerment, the proper delegation, clarifying the objective, obviously. I also tried celebrating successes and so on, to have fun. Because, John, one thing that I learned during my working life is that more the team, also big organization, has fun, the performance is higher, and the balance with the work-life balance is much better. Also, for instance, event I manage a lot. I created a lot of event on team building. Also, as a leader, I always did regular skip level call. I didn't speak only regularly with my direct reports, but also with all the people below. We had calls where I had 1 hour dedicated to a certain part of the team. They could ask me every question. And in the end, we were also having fun because there was a discussion also on private life and something like that. This creates trust. And last but not least, I would like to mention something that I learned from mobile network. Today, a great business group in Nokia. The autopsy without blame. There are always mistakes. There are always bugs. There are always issues. But if you tackle the issue from the lesson learned perspective, I think all the people accept the feedback because you're not blaming someone. You are just saying, okay, we just learn with this issue, we just learned something. Let's broaden what we learn and let's avoid it in the future. Then also this soft way to manage the people, I think is appreciated.
We've become very much more aware of mental health and wellness issues within organizations. Do you think AI raises a whole new load of problems and issues? We hear of people getting too attached to their chatbots, for instance, and using them as therapists, falling in love with them, even marrying them. You're seeing these kind of headlines everywhere. But within organizations, there are fears of being replaced. There's a kind of uncanny valley fearfulness that you find. And more broadly, a sense that the ground is shifting underneath one's feet, which can be really quite disturbing. But are these problems really new ones or just echoes of old ones?
I think, great question. Also, I love your last part of the question because I think this type of issue, this type of problem affecting human behavior always were present. Today, there is a difference, are faster, are amplified because as we know, there are 100 new tools in AI every week. And the people and are open tool that all the people can use, not only inside the enterprise and so on. Then I think, first of all, the right vision, and it's not the case that I accepted to be a strategic advisor of Convergent, is AI is there to augment the human capability, not to replace. And even if there are few routinary work that are replaced, a person that was doing this can be upskilled, again, L&D, to do something new or to monitor what's happened or to prepare what's happened. Then, and what I learned, the best things to remove the fear is the use cases approach. When we had, for instance, on the content development, as you can imagine, all my team understood after a second that the content development could be automated by AI. Then we created a new flow of work, a use case dedicated to this, where they understood that their ability and their skill, plus new skill that they needed to learn, are very instrumental to do the same things much faster and with a learner experience much higher. Then we raised the bar, and then they understood that their contribution was always fundamental. But again, the fundamental thing is the use case. Let's redefine the day by day immediately. Then the people remove their fear because they understand what will happen in day by day, not in general. Step by step approach. I think this is key. This, at least in my experience, was key.
Fascinating. I think what you're saying there is that in redesigning workflows, we need to give thought to these issues of mental health and wellness, because we need to make sure that there's incentive enough for the humans in the loop. They need to realise that this is a positive thing for their role. And to do that, we need to make sure it truly is a positive thing for their role, that we're not just making them into these passive quality control people who just sit there and say, yeah, I'll pass that, that's okay, or no, I won't pass that, go back and check that fact, that they're actively involved in the process as partners with the technology. Very interesting. So lastly, who do you look to for inspiration and new ideas in the industry? You're giving us a lot of inspiration and new ideas yourself now, but where do you get yours from? Who do you follow personally that you'd recommend to others?
If I need to mention one person that I'm following and is inspiring me, is Josh Pershing.
Yep, I've talked to Josh a couple of times on my other podcast.
Yeah, I know. But because he has a remarkable ability to interpret the full evolution, including the geopolitical aspect, and giving direction or vision, a long-term vision on the evolution of the human resource, but not only human resource, of the different company roles. How human resource could evolve to AI, talent development, obviously future of learning, considering all the aspects. And he also create a sort of use cases, if you want. The super worker, the super leader, that is a leader driven by an engine that is AI that help the person to take better decisions, and so on. And I think this is really inspiring me, and I'm following him from several years, and also I think many times his view happen after a few months or year happen. On top of this, what is inspiring me today is also thanks also obviously to the strategic advisor role in Convergent, to observe this ecosystem of AI startup, also big player of an AI and the other, because I think there is no job, for sure not learning, that is decoupled from all this evolution. And as you said before, also in your personal experience, these things happen so fast. Not the ground under our feet is moving. And then I think to keep an eye on what is happening in that ecosystem that is a lot of startup, but also big company, is fundamental. And for sure is a strong inspiration for innovation in learning. But as I told you, I think it's even more general.
Thanks so much, Marco, for sharing all those insights and for your enthusiasm and investment in people and in progress through technology. It's been really interesting.
Thank you, John. It was very interesting also for me. Thank you very much.
That's all on the Learning Leaders podcast for this time. Many thanks to our guest. Learning Leaders comes from NIIT in association with The Learning Hack. To make sure you don't miss an episode, please subscribe to the show on your platform of choice or on YouTube. And if you want to help others find us, please make sure you like, rate, and give a glowing review. We'll be back in your feed very soon. So until next time, keep the faith, keep leading, and above all, keep learning.